Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, October 23rd edition of the Image Builder Office Hours, a sub-project of SIG Cluster Lifecycle. Just a reminder that this meeting does adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, so in general, please be excellent to one another. And we are recording this meeting, so it will be published on YouTube at the conclusion of this. I will go ahead and link the agenda in the chat for anybody who's attending live. If there are any topics that you want to cover, please go ahead and add them there. And with that said, over to you, Moshe.
Cool. So in really no random order, but I think one of the things that I wanted to discuss, and I think I know you're, Jason, you're quite vocal about this, Containerd versus Docker CE kind of discussion in terms of defaulting which runtime is used and which options are used and which version of Containerd is used. So there was a bit of discussion previously, but from what I've gathered, and I could very well be wrong here, is that versions are only specified for Docker and not Containerd with the releases. So I know there is testing on Containerd, but they don't publish versions for Containerd. So maybe that's something that we need to get updated on the release notes, or understand why it isn't published, but maybe just to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why there's specific versions of Docker that are published with each release is because the Docker integration isn't a CRI compatible integration. There's a bit of code called the Docker shim that basically provides a CRI-like interface to Docker over Docker itself. So without having that kind of standards-driven interoperability, we have to actually test and validate specific versions of Docker, whereas Containerd should theoretically just work because it complies with the CRI spec. That said, from a practical standpoint, the reason why we landed on Containerd when implementing the AWS provider for Cluster API was because I had a lot of practical experience in the past with trying to maintain compatibility and having to deal with it over Docker versions. And in the past, Docker was really bad about introducing breaking changes, even in patch releases that could affect the compatibility with Kubernetes. I don't know if that's the case really anymore because, well, I've been supporting something that's been using Containerd for pretty much the past year. And up until the recent issue that was raised with the image builder repo for Containerd and interaction with Artifactory repositories, that's the first issue that I've been aware of as far as compatibility and interoperability across Containerd versions, even across minor versions of Containerd. So in the past, we read from Containerd 1.1 to 1.2 without any issues, and it was only in this 1.3 release and the way that it interacts with Artifactory that we started to see some issues, I think. That said, I don't think I'm overly partial either way. It's just, I believe the test and support matrix that we would have to handle around Docker would probably be a bit more hairy than Containerd if we go down that route.
Looking at the issue 81 reported by Figo about 1.10 and 1.3, so there seems to be a little bit of a dispute there as to which one is the ideal kind of release to provide. So perhaps we need to actually support multiple versions of Containerd, or make it parameterized. Although, yeah,
I can
I don't
say
know what to.
in the cluster API provider, it is parameterized already. You could override it if you really wanted to.
But you'd have to provide the SHA, so which is less than ideal. So maybe the other thing is maybe we need to switch from the binary distributions to the RPM and DEB packages.
Are they actually distributing RPM and DEBs for Containerd outside of Docker? I know in the past there were packages that were shipped via the Docker repo, but those packages actually explicitly disabled the CRI support.
So as far as I know, you can use those DEBs and RPMs. You just need to set an environment variable or initialize the config.
I have no objections to that, to going down that route if that's the way that we want to go.
Yeah, I don't know the history there of why it was downloaded as a binary instead, other than, I mean, Jason, you kind of just said why, I guess. But yeah, I'm happy to explore if it can work via package install, native package install instead, because that would be better.
Okay, cool. So maybe I'll open an issue for that. That handles Containerd versus Docker. The next one is 68. ECR support for pre-pulling the images. So I'm not sure if you have seen this from Aaron Miller. Basically, the need to, I'm assuming this probably stems from Essentials PKS images being downloaded and then pushed to ECR, I suspect.
So I think this one differs a little bit. So Aaron is working with somebody who is building their kind of own binary pipeline and image pipeline, and they're hosting that specifically in ECR. So currently he's not able to use the image builder because there's no way when creating the image to have the authentication to be able to properly pull those images.
So like there were two options I kind of proposed. Was the one being he consumes the upstream image. Just hold on a second. Just give me one more second. Apologies, my kid is crying.
No worries.
Yeah, I've definitely been there.
Yeah, so the one option was to use that pipeline and consume upstream image and then modify that for just the config admin config images pull phase. That was the one option, and the other option is for us to actually handle this in a more hook-friendly manner and allow customization of both the Packer config and Ansible to be run on it. So I know, yeah, so basically provide the extension mechanisms to support this and other type of customization use cases.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because longer term, I think we're going to see not just ECR, but other consumers that are, bought into specific cloud stacks want to be able to do similar things with their cloud stack of choice. So whatever the equivalent is for the GCR repos and the what Azure offers for private repositories, we're likely to see similar requirements come down there. So I think longer term, having a some type of extension point or extensibility feature that we can use for that makes a lot of sense. I think what timeline we look at for being able to provide that may determine whether or not we should allow the interim support that Aaron is asking for, though.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I'm going to look to add that into the CLI that I've built that kind of wraps Packer, and then essentially generates those Packer configs on demand and then runs Packer using those configs. So using that mechanism, we should be able to provide a hook fairly easy. It's just a matter of how long it takes to get that CLI merged. Maybe we should just find out from Aaron how urgent this is, or yeah. Okay, so that's the ECR one. Then on the roadmap, so Tim suggested that we kind of prioritize and maybe get volunteers for the roadmap items. So should probably pull these back into issues. But the first one that I'm looking at is create a binary that simplifies the consumption of Image Builder. So that would allow basically packing all the Ansible playbooks and configs and everything required to run the Image Build process into the binary, and then having just a binary that you can distribute and release, and not having to clone and worry about the make files and those types of things. So that one I can take on. The question is who can kind of take on other items, or who has on their roadmap to take on some of those other roadmap items we discussed last time around.
I know I agree with that item as a priority item. I know you've got the CLI PR there, and I know it's next on the agenda, but I wanted to apologize for not having had the time to review it yet. It is something I'm interested in specifically, so I very much want to take a look at it. But I am able to dedicate a good bit of my time to this, despite what I just said of not having had the time the last 2 weeks. So there are parts of this that I want to take on, specifically around the testing. Around automating testing and automating building and publishing images and versioning. Those are things that I'm interested in.
Excellent. So it kind of aligns with the order that it's defined in the roadmap now.
Yeah, I guess the two items that I skipped were like facilitating end-to-end testing, which I guess with published images, and then creating like the bill of materials. But yeah, it's roughly going top down there.
Cool. Jason, anything on your side?
Right now, I'm probably mostly subscribed for Cluster API related work. So I'm happy to do, mostly I'm probably only available for reviews and maybe and resolving any issues that directly impact Cluster API at this time. I don't know that I can take on any additional work for specific to the image builder right now.
Would you kind of agree with the order of the roadmap, Phil?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, cool. So that caters for that one. And then that just leaves the final item for the CLI. So it is quite, it's really just almost the interfaces at the moment. I do have a Packer implementation that I'm going to bring in. So Packer plus Ansible wrapper, and then also a QEMU and config admin wrapper. So there are quite a few steps on the CLI. Hopefully I can have that ready perhaps for a demo by the next meeting. But any feedback on the initial work would be greatly appreciated. The one thing that Timothy did mention was discovery of the options for each type of cloud build. And I'm not sure I fully agree with him, because I think those options aren't really discoverable, as they're really like Packer variables, like freeform Packer variables that you either put in or you don't. So I don't know if there's kind of any opinions one way or the other on that.
Yeah, again, I'll have to apologize for not looking at it. I know that there is, based on what you just said, I feel like there's a Packer command that spits out all the variables, though, if you give it a template. But I don't know if that also includes, if you're adding a bunch of, extra var files, whether it would include those or not. I think it's only whatever's in the base template.
But also we want to kind of remove those templates anyway. So move from having a template per cloud provider per builder and generate those templates on demand. So we're kind of moving those variables from the Packer definition into the CLI definition and then generating.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I guess I'll have to defer comments until I actually read what you have. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's cool. That's a question of where's the best place. So do you stick it in the CLI, or to provide some less decoupled mechanism for defining variables per cloud? I think that's kind of really the question there. But I'll let you have a look at the PR, and then we can go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Any other agenda items?
Well, I'll take that silence as a no. All right. Sorry, I missed that last item. I had somebody at my door, but I will also follow up and provide a review on the CLI PR as well, Moshe.
Cool. Thanks. Okay. So,
and if there's nothing else,
yeah.
You have something else, Moshe?
No, nothing else from my side.
All right, great. Well then, thank you all, and we will see you next meeting.
Thanks.
Cheers.